RD Winery, we're the first Vietnamese-owned winery in Napa. And so with that, we really value diversity and inclusivity in the wine industry. That was one thing our owner didn't see. He just didn't see himself in the industry. And so he wanted to create wines to go with the kind of cuisine that he wanted to enjoy. All kinds of spicy foods and anything from the sea, which are key in the Vietnamese cuisine, and kind of Pan-Asian culture in general. Our owner visited Napa in 2011. He fell in love with Castillo de Omarosa, which is the castle up in Calistoga, and decided to build his own castle in Vietnam. He wanted to showcase what he thought was the best wine from the best region in the world. So he purchased the facility here in 2011, and everything we made from 2011 to 2017 was exported and showcased in that castle in Vietnam. But in 2017, we kind of shifted the perspective. We wanted to showcase what we were doing to the local community, to our neighbors, and that's when we created our Fifth Moon and 100 Knot labels, with our Khoai label following shortly after.
Our owner, he was a prominent developer of hospitality infrastructure of the country and wanted to bring more of this diverse culture wine and dine palette. He enlisted his niece as our CEO, and she's been running the business since 2012. Her name is Mylan Phan. She is the reason that we have the local distribution today. In 2019, she's the one who kind of decided that there's not a lot of Asian representation through Napa. She flipped the script, opened up our taste room for the local public, and now we create the Fifth Moon, 100 Knot, and Khoai labels as a way to represent Vietnamese culture here, and then also as a way to push more of a Pan-Asian friendly food and wine perspective. We're starting off with our Fifth Moon label. It's our exploratory feature. It's the wines that we source outside of Napa specifically, still California based, but we're looking for those varietals that are not so represented through the Napa Valley and looking for more exotic palates in wine.
Very nice.
You're starting off with a pretty rare wine. This is our 2020 Gruner Veltliner. It's a grape that originates in Austria, and it's very temperamental to grow. It likes a higher elevation in cold and coastal climate, which Napa does not provide. We are known to be Mediterranean here. To say that we love it, the grapes don't.
Yeah.
So we actually source this one pretty far out. It comes just south of the San Luis Obispo area, from a little valley side cliff called Etna. There's a vineyard about 5 miles from that cliffside. The elevation's about 1,300 feet, so it's just this nice, bright, high elevated, full sun exposure, but not heat. I like to explain Gruner Veltliners as Sauvignon Blanc's cheeky little sister. It's very acidic, it's very light and kind of aromatic on the palate. I give it like a grapefruit acidity, and then it goes into more of a like herbaceous, almost wasabi back end.
Interesting.
Not gonna be spicy. That like tang that wasabi gives.
Yeah.
It's a very cleansing one, I find.
Yeah, it smells pretty light on the nose.
She's like dangerously light on body when it comes to just enjoying her. I find that you could probably go through a bottle before you even knew it.
That's really interesting.
It's very refreshing.
Very refreshing, very light, acidic. I do kind of get the wasabi note though, like it's just a little tangy. Not spicy, but...
A little tang on the back.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I like to use this wine for the heavier palated foods, so like things that are heavy in grease, heavy in spice, salt. I do it with like a pad thai, drinking noodles, even some sushi. I find that it's a good cut for those bigger flavors and helps you get more to the secondary profiles.
We want to find something for everyone. So we have wines starting at $20 all the way up to $150, really with the intention of helping people discover wines, things that they may not have heard of, like our Gruner Veltliner, which is a more unique varietal, but still really delicious. So one of the things that I really value of RD Winery is our experience. I come from a luxury hospitality background, and so I want to provide that service and experience to everyone. I want everyone to be able to enjoy that at an accessible price point. I'm a Napa local, I'm a 5th generation Napa native, and so being able to enjoy these wines, like I said, for $20 and try and keep our price points as low as possible to provide that elevated hospitality experience at an accessible price point. I'm very proud of the team that we have committed to that experience, and when people leave, they've hopefully found something that they love.
So we're gonna just keep stepping it up a notch with your next flash here.
Okay.
This is coming from our Khoai label, which is the best sourcing that we could provide as far as grapes go. This is our 2021 Chardonnay. Comes from Durrell Vineyard from Sonoma Coast. Durrell is known to have the oldest strain of Chardonnay brought to California.
Okay.
They have the Clone 1T4, which was brought in, I think, 1835-ish. It was initially planted in Livermore, but it didn't do too well, so then they contracted, brought it up to the Sonoma Coast Vineyard, Durrell, where it completely flourished. Other viticulturists and winemakers saw how well these grapes were producing shards and wanted a piece of the action.
Yeah.
Started grafting off trimmings from that to their own grapes. Almost 80% of Chardonnay has some tracing to this grape here.
Interesting.
Here she is by herself, the shard of Chardonnays.
All right. It's oak. It's oaked, right?
It's
Yeah.
5% French oak. It's very soft though. You're not going to get a lot of that oak astringency.
Yeah.
I like to give it kind of like a soft apple to cream palate. And then for me, the after effect, as I'm taking the glass away from my face, I always get like a banana and cream vibe. It's a little tropical.
I definitely get the banana cream. That's really interesting.
Okay. It's the first Chardonnay that I've ever had given
Yeah.
my hand like that.
Yeah, you get it on the nose, like
Exactly.
pretty heavily, yeah.
And so the Khoai label is the primary sourcing we can provide as far as grapes go. We are sourcing them from the more distinguished vineyards of Northern California,
Very cool.
Durrell being one of them.
So what would you recommend pairing with this?
For me, I always think of something in a cream sauce, whether it be poultry or fish, seasonal veggies. If I'm doing something sweet, I would go for maybe like a cheesecake with fresh fruit.
Delicious.
Between production and our tasting room team, we have less than 10 employees, and so we like to say we move mountains. And so we all really take ownership in our brand and, again, that accessibility, what we want to see in the industry. We have a lot of control over what we're able to produce, and so that makes it really fun that we have a lot of flexibility in the types of wines that we're able to bring to market and showcase to people and explain. We offer a tour and tasting, so you can explore our production facility and see how the wine is made, where the magic happens, as they say. It's really fun to kind of see also what's up and coming and the new creations that our winemaker has curated.
We're going to get a little funky with my next splash here. We're going back to the Fifth Moon label with our field blend. This is a 2021 vintage. And have you ever encountered a field blend before?
I don't think so.
So a field blend happens in the vineyard, and it's when a viticulturist puts a bunch of random grapes in that lot and just kind of sells off portions of the lot randomly. So we know that in this blend, there's Zinfandel, Alicante Bichet, Mission, and Mourvedre grape.
Okay.
We have no idea what the ratio is.
Okay.
You know, kind of a gamble every year. What our winemaker does to kind of control the chaos in this random array of grapes
Sure.
is he puts the grapes through what's called a whole cluster carbonic fermentation process. And so they're putting the grapes in as little berry bushels, straight from the vine, threw them in the fermentation tank, threw some yeast on them, sucked out all the air, and then let them ferment like that.
That's interesting.
Exactly. They're basically able to ferment as berries within themselves. You could have basically a mouthful of Zinfandel from berry by the end of it. And that gave them the ability to ferment as their own grapes before being fully blended. It's our way of controlling the chaos. And you notice she has the pretty blue label.
I like it.
Sourcing these grapes down from Clement Hills from Lodi. It comes from a Stampede Vineyard.
Awesome.
It's right next to a big rodeo, apparently. I give it like a cherry liqueur profile.
Okay.
And it goes into a little bit more of an herbaceous back end, kind of like a sage clove vibe. The smell used to remind me of the fancy floral soaps that our grandparents used to have. The ones you couldn't touch, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little nostalgic for me. It just
Okay.
gives me all of those aromatics as I'm taking it away from my mouth.
On the nose, pretty strong nose, but let's give it a sip. Kind of a medium body, but has an herbaceous finish.
She's a little funky. It doesn't give you like,
A lot going on.
doesn't give you traditional red wine notes. Not the big tannins, not the big body.
No.
Got a lot of just like flavor profiles.
Yeah,
I find.
definitely smoother than I would have thought.
I like to recommend it with pizza. For me, it's a perfect pairing for a supreme combination pizza.
Yeah, I actually totally get that, yeah.
And then we're gonna stay a little funky here with our Zinfandel.
Okay.
This is our 2021. This comes from Lodi as well, comes from Cherry House Vineyard, which is a little bit more inland, but they sit up the Muckaluma River. So they get a lot of heat and these rusher environments, but a lot of water access. It breeds very like robust cold fruit. Traditionally, Zinfandels from Lodi are known to be more of the big jammy palates, bigger tannins, because of the area they're grown in. So we tried to make a fresh fruit takeover of a Zinfandel. I almost like to say that we made it like a Pinot Noir, where we pick the berries a little sooner and limit the skin and some contact during fermentation to not have these bigger flavors.
Yeah.
So for me, it's on the sour berry forward side. It gives me like a sour plum to sour cranberry. Doesn't give you a lot of like bigger bodies. It's very light, but kind of gives you like this back end and tamarind.
Okay.
It's very aromatic.
Oh wow, yeah. Smells very full-bodied, but it might not be, so let's see.
It's got a lot of character to it for sure.
A little spicy almost.
Exactly. When I first, and not necessarily with this year's, but our previous year, our 2020, tasted like chamoy to me, like Mexican candy. So I always sat there and was like, I'm gonna figure out a red wine cocktail with it.
Yeah.
And then I would pair this, I would go with something on the spicier side, so like Szechuan chicken, sweet and sour pork. Honestly, if you wanted to do something greasy like McDonald's, I'd probably pair it with like a nice quarter pounder.
The finish of this wine has a spicy, almost gochujang like feel at the end. It's really interesting.
Our fifth moon label, like I said, is an exploratory feature. It also has ties to the Vietnamese spring-summer solstice. It happens in the fifth lunar cycle of the year, usually at the end of May. It's usually the change of harvest for the country. And so the idea is that as these summer months come into play, we have this new crop and new opportunities to come together and enjoy good food. And that's why we're very food focused with the fifth moon label. We're trying to bring more of those exploratory presences.
Our tasting room is modeled after Han Long Bay in Vietnam, so you'll see kind of those influence of sand and movement and water, and of course our bamboo reference as well to our 100-knot label. It's kind of similar to an homage of home for our owner. This is a great room for larger groups. It's a great place for everybody to kind of gather together. We do our paint nights in here. We've had a sushi class making in here. It's really fun to be surrounded by art specifically for the paint nights. You're so inspired by all of these Vietnamese artists. And then our patio area, we just want someone to be able to enjoy that beautiful garden. I always say we have a little oasis back here. You'd have no idea the expanse of the property just from the road, and so it's fun for people to discover. This was originally a sake production facility in the 2000s, and so that was kind of a Japanese garden. It fell into disrepair over the years, and we were able to revitalize it. We use recycled water from our water treatment plant, so it's very green, and we want to be able to recycle in every way that we can. We're a Napa Green Winery, and so sustainability is very important to us as well.
So finally, we're going to steer into our 100-knot label, which is intended to be more of the classic Napa Sonoma designates, the wines that we're used to seeing through Napa Valley. We've just noticed that there's been this bigger cultivation of bolder flavors in wine, which we appreciate a nice bold glass of Merlot. But when we're thinking about the diversity of what you're pairing your wines with as far as food goes, we find that the bolder profiles kind of limit your ability to pair. So we're trying to bring back these kind of floral and well-balanced notes for our classic red and white wines. With our 2019 Merlot here, typically Merlots are sourced a little higher elevation, kind of towards the ridgeline of the Napa Valley area. They like them to be stressed out, so they put them in these more rougher environments that almost raisin the grapes. That usually builds bigger bodies of tannins for your grapes. We source this one from closer to the valley floor to get a different layer of acidity and brightness in our berries. So for me, typically Merlots hit me with tannin first and then bleed into the berry profile. This one hits me with like a deep plum first, and it goes and develops into that tannin. I find that as it develops with the tannin, that kind of second, third sip, it gets a little spicy. Kind of reminds me of like an espresso or like a mocha.
Okay, interesting. Definitely getting more spice on the way out. Yeah, really tannin heavy just to sip it, but then you kind of get some different like darker berry, maybe really dark plum or dark black cherry on the way out. Yeah.
You're thinking all the purple fruits.
Yeah, yep.
I find that it pairs really well with a darker profiled item, like I always say dark chocolate truffle.
Yeah.
It brings a little bit more of that berry profile out of the Merlot.
Yeah.
If I were going to do it on a savory side, though, I always think about like a braised lamb or a smoked tri-tip, something with a little bit of smoke and spice there, just highlights the tannin and the spice that the Merlot has.
That would be great.
The 100-knot Khoai label are based off of an old Vietnamese fable of a laborer named Khoai who worked for a farmer for many years. In the time that he works for this farmer, he falls in love with the farmer's daughter. So one day he proposes the idea to marry the girl to the farmer. And the farmer says, I know that you've worked for me for so long, but I just don't know if you're worthy of my daughter's love. And so I'm going to give you this task to find a 100-knot stick of bamboo, to be 100 of those tiny knots you see in the stick, and just so tall in the forest that if you can already see it, you knew it wasn't there. But Khoai was in love, so he takes the quest upon himself and is perilously searching for this stick of bamboo for months on end. Kind of reaching his breaking point, one day he's sitting at a riverbed, horse for wear, when he has a chance encounter with a mystical being. So he's like, I'm obviously losing my mind, making this guy up in my head. And so he sits down with this being and explains the situation and that he really wants to marry this girl, but he's been given this impossible task. And so the being is like, I'll make a deal for you. I really feel for you in your crisis here. If you can gather 100 single knot sticks of bamboo, I will then grant you a spell that turns all of those sticks conjoined into one single knot stick. And so Khoai, of course, as soon as he could, just gathers up these 100 sticks, throws them down. The mystical being gives him the spell. Khoai is able to put them together and then take them apart so that he can take them home. Goes back to the farm, throws them in front of the farmer, recites the spell. The stick comes together and the farmer is so impressed. He's like, of course you can marry my daughter. In fact, let me chop that stick back up and we'll make chopsticks for your reception.
That's incredible. I really like that.
Yeah, and it's cute. It's a very common tale that has different endings. I once had a girl come from a Vietnamese finishing school, and she said the version that she had, Khoai recites the spell, the stick comes, and the farmer still is like, you're not good enough for my daughter.
Yeah.
And so the stick being this magical thing, it basically plants itself in the ground and starts absorbing all of the villagers to the stick. So everybody gets kind of like stuck on the stick. And the only way that they can be freed is if the farmer allows the wedding to happen.
Interesting.
I like to say it changes the story from like the Disney version to the Brothers Grimm.
Yeah.
It kind of changes the perspective of, following yourself and perseverance to don't be so stubborn.
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome.
We believe wine is about community, and so we have such a great wine community that we love seeing. We have quarterly pickup parties for our wine club. We have different events that are tailored to them, or they get discounted tickets, and we always enjoy seeing them back and welcoming them and checking up on their dog or their kid, We call it our wine community because it really is. We have just such a great support system of people who continue to come back and want to enjoy the wines. Our community extends throughout the United States, and we have a lot of great benefits, including early access to some of those wines. We also have it totally customizable, so if you love our Gruner, you can get as many Gruners as you want each season. Whatever you want to kind of customize, you have that flexibility, and you get discounts on all the wines as well through the wine club. So it's a really great deal. There's no fee to join, it's just the cost of the wines. We try and make it as affordable as possible so that everyone can enjoy our wine.
So you've come to Napa Valley, you have to, finish off with the Cabernet.
Yes, I do.
Of course, it is our baby. For you today, I have our 2019 vintage. This is coming from the Oakville area of Napa. We were informed that from the vineyard that we're sourcing it from, we select the grapes at different elevations, at 3 different levels of elevation, to trap a little bit more of a layered palate. And then the initial intention with this Cabernet Sauvignon is to bring back more of the French presence. So it's a little bit more floral. I find that it gives you a fruit palate initially, something deep like a plum, or black cherry.
Sure.
Goes into a little bit of florality, kind of gives me a little bit of a vanilla profile, and then just finishes with a soft alcohol proof and tannin on the back end.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. I get like a vanilla clove situation, maybe a little cinnamon even.
It doesn't have that same bigger shock that a lot of Napa Cabs have.
Yeah, it's lighter.
Very easy going.
Yeah, definitely smooth. That's delicious.
Good
It's really good.
indicator.
So which wines would you say age the best?
My prime age outers would be this Cabernet Sauvignon and then the Merlot that you had earlier as well. I find that both of them, when we first popped them, maybe a year ago now, were very acidic and very kind of just young in body. And in the last year that I've had them, they both have settled down so much so, gotten more of these chocolate and full-bodied palates that I'm so excited to see the next 5 to 10 years with them.